evening, and welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. As you can see, we are back with the Newcastle United podcast, not on a Wednesday, thanks to the midweek fixtures. We're here on a Thursday. I'm your host, Chris. I've been joined by our stat man as usual, and as you can see, he has made his comeback. The man with a stronger jawline than Newcastle United's back five. It is Daniel Wales, the blue tick man. How are we doing, lads?
I'm doing very well.
You missed them, Dan. You've missed them intros, mate.
Oh, Chris, I dream of them.
Fantastic, mate. Or nightmares, as most people might say. To be honest.
No. That would be harsh.
Yeah. Excellent. Yes, Dan has come back to join us. He's away doing local TV. If you don't know, we'll try and get some info out, Dan, put some links where you can check his stuff out towards the end of the episode. But we're going to talk all things Newcastle United in a minute. We've had a cracking week. We're going to get stuck right in. Before we do a little bit of housekeeping, if you haven't already, please click that like and subscribe button. It's just covering Dan's beautiful jawline there, as I've said. But yeah, we're 1906 subscribers now, so we're over the 1900 mark, which we're over the moon with. We're pushing on, hopefully, to 2,000 soon. So keep clicking that button if you haven't. It really helps the channel grow. It's all free content. We don't charge anybody a penny. It's difficult times for everybody out there. We just love doing this, love talking Newcastle with you guys. And as we said, we're live as well. Jump in the comments as you always do, and it really helps the episode flow. So let's get stuck straight into it then. And I'm going to go back to the blue tick man for this one because I built him up. And I think you were probably there, Mr. Blue Tick Man, weren't you? So we're looking at 4 from 2 this week. So 4 points from 2 really difficult games, really on the fixture calendar. A draw against Manchester United, which we possibly could have won. And obviously we beat Everton last night at St James's Park 1-0. Dan, what did you make of the 2 games, mate?
I'll start on Sunday, obviously Manchester United. A game where, to be honest, we did all right. I mean, first half, I think we were better than them. Second half, we went off the boil a little bit. We're a little bit leggy, but did enough to continue. Yes, they had a couple of chances in the second half where perhaps they could have scored. And obviously there was that pathetic excuse or attempted getting a goal from Ronaldo and crowding referee, which it just annoyed. It was ridiculous.
We've had a say on that as well, mate.
It was pathetic and ridiculous. If just anyone who in their right mind thinks that Fabian Shaw took that free kick, honestly, I don't know what to say about that. But anyway, yeah, we did all right in that game. We looked a bit leggy towards the end, and they put us under a bit of pressure. But for the most part, I think deserved the draw, given our first half performance. Joe Linton should score in that half as well. First header, decent. Second header has got to do better. And then on to last night. Yes, I was there. Sort of quite similar. First half, really good. Second half, we went off the boil a little bit, but the difference is Everton, for all the possession they had in that second half yesterday, did absolutely nothing with it. They offered no threat. They had a lot of the ball passed around, but just didn't do much with it. And which is quite a concern for them and Frank Lampard, to be honest, considering that, they have some good attacking players, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Alex Iwobi, and then when they went off, they got even worse, to be honest. Don't get me started on Anthony Gordon. But anyway, as I say, Everton, disappointing. Newcastle did enough. Could have had more goals in the first half, but Miguel Almiron.
I owe him a huge apology, Dan. I'm not too proud a man to admit it. I owe the man an apology. And I probably want to thank Jack Grealish, to be fair, because ever since he said he was shit, he's been phenomenal. So
he's created a monster, hasn't he? He's created a monster.
He really has, mate. But that's a great shout, Dan. I mean, coming to you, Mark, obviously we jumped on for a live reaction, didn't we, straight after the game. But, I mean, from a Newcastle United point of view, I mean, 4 points from those 2 games, even, as Dan rightly says there, we weren't even at our best either, mate, were we? So it's got to be a good turnaround. Eddie Howe's got to be happy with that. And then Spurs at the weekend, they looked a bit poor, I thought, against Manchester United last night as well. So maybe we've got a chance of getting something against them, mate. I know we're going to come on that later, but do you think it's been a good week for Newcastle so far?
Definitely. Yeah. Look, we said last night, didn't we? You never really got out of second or third gear. Yesterday, didn't have to in the second half. Possession first half was split 58-42. Newcastle's favour and made the most of it. Everton had 58-42 in the second half and didn't have a single shot. And that tells you all you need to know about Everton's way of playing at the moment. They are finding, making it more difficult to break them down, but they're just offer nothing going forward, and they
all fought and no shite, as they would say, right?
Yeah, they're going to struggle if they can't stop putting the ball in the net. So it was a good win. Never really having to really play, at their peak. So, and to a point against Manchester United at Old Trafford is always a good result. Dan hit the nail on the head there. I think it started to get a little bit edgy towards the end. I mean, how Marcus Rashford doesn't score at the end is absolutely beyond me, and Fred as well with pretty much an open goal. But it's a good point. Again, there were chances there, and Joe, we touched on this on Monday, didn't we? Joe should score, especially the second header. But yeah, you're delighted with 4 points out of those two, and you roll into the weekend with massive confidence that you can get something out of Spurs.
Absolutely. But I don't think Spurs, again, they look great. I mean, a lot of teams are leggy this week. It's a busy week, isn't it? And we're cramming in all these fixtures towards the World Cup. But I mean, yeah, again, just talking about last night, I thought, as Dan rightly says there, we were able to win the game without really being that good. I mean, one observation was Joe Litton, Dan, just to get your take on that, because obviously you were at the game, you got a different perspective to me and Mark. He looked okay in the first half. He started the game kind of typical Joe Litton style, strong, making himself dominant, pushing players around and that. But, he started to lose his head a little bit from what we could see on the TV. And then he looked like he got hooked at half time, which was smart management by Eddie Howe. How did you view it in the game, mate? Were you looking at him thinking he's going to get a red card here? Do you think it was right for Eddie to do that?
I didn't think he was going to perhaps get a red card, but I could see also why he took him off. I mean, he started the game okay, made a couple of silly challenges, obviously got himself booked. But then, of course, also went down at the end of the half with a bit of a knock, so that probably came into why Eddie Howe took him off as well. But he wasn't as good as he has been. Joe Willock came on, did all right. So for me, it wasn't really a massive issue that he went off at that point. Obviously, partly perhaps because he was on a yellow card and had made a couple of other fouls, but also partly because he had that bit of a knock. So yeah, players, they're not always going to be 10 out of 10 every single game. And so he's allowed to have one off day when Miguel Almiron had such a good day. So as far as I'm concerned, it's not the end of the world. He'll probably be involved again on Sunday against Tottenham, and hopefully has a bit of a better day then. Absolutely.
But we're going to come on to the defence in a minute, Mark. But just we spoke a little bit about this, but be keen to get obviously you and Dan's take on this. Now, we're all big fans of Matty Targett. Obviously he was brilliant on loan. We were really happy when he signed permanently, but it really looks like Dan Burn has made that left back spot his now, and I think the way he's played in that position, without being what you would probably look in class as a traditional wing back or full back, he looks like a centre half who just went for a wander, doesn't he? Really, but he's playing so well there. I mean, you probably can't drop him even against players like Son at the weekend. He's probably going to get another start, isn't he, mate? Would you say at left back?
Potentially, yeah. It's funny, I was having a chat with a lad at work today about Matty Targett, and he says it's funny, every time you watch him, you think, you don't notice him. He does a good job. There's nothing really headline about him.
Stand out,
yeah. I think Dan Burn obviously stands out because he's such a big lad.
You can see him from Whitney Bay, even if you don't go to the crowd, you just look up.
But Targett he is a steady footballer. He doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes. He doesn't steal the headlines an awful lot. Just does a really solid job. And I can see him coming back in. I don't think Dan Burn's the answer long-term at left back. I do think Targett gives you a little bit more balance in terms of ability to get forward from both sides, because I think it's quite lopsided that Dan Burn won't overlap. He'll not do those runs to the opposition sort of byline and stuff like that Matty Targett can do. And that potentially then relieves a little bit of the pressure for Targett for Trippier to do that. But look, Dan Burn's played so well over the last couple of games. It's difficult to drop him when in form, and when you've got that kind of working relationship between the back four, it's worked really well. So it will be interesting to see. I do think at some point Targett will come back in though and remake that position his own.
I think you might be right. I mean, Roger's in the comments there saying his size and presence was and is massive. I mean, he literally is massive. I mean, just one more thing for you, Mark, before I get Dan in on this one. I see in Talk Sport, we're talking about this today, and Neil Warnock, to be fair, gets a lot of stick. I quite like Neil Warnock, to be fair. He's quite a throwback, but he's very straightforward with his opinion. And Neil Warnock was saying, and I think we're all in agreement here, but I'm just keen to get both your takes on this. Dan Burn for England, mate? I mean, come on. How long is this going to take? If it's ever going to happen?
It's funny. I think he probably ends up in this wider squad or base of 50 odd players or whatever it is that they're looking at. But I can't see him making the final cut. I genuinely, I just can't see it happening. he's played really well, but you know what Southgate's like. The chance for an outsider to come into that squad and stake a claim is going to be really difficult. I just can't see him being on the plane, and shame for him, I guess. But the flip side of that, it does wonders for Newcastle's ability to then roll into the January sort of time, at the end of December, January time, with a pretty much fully fit squad. If you're only going to have a couple of players really that are going to be away on international duty, it does make you get the others back that aren't quite fit. You can play some sort of friendlies to try and get them a little bit of a pre-season, as Eddie Howe said about Isak, and then you roll into January with a transfer window coming as well. And if you're sitting at that 5th, 6th spot by the time that the break happens, that things are really looking good for the rest of the season. But no, I've gone totally off on one there, and no, I can't see Burn making the World Cup squad.
No, but Jordan Toon for Life says saying playing at the back allows Trippier to move forward, so we almost become a back three, and Trippier effectively becomes another member of the midfield. Dan, what's your take on Dan Burn making the plane? Or as Roger says, the plane wouldn't take off if Dan Burn. He must have extra leg room if he gets on that plane. By the way, mate, my God, imagine sitting behind Dan Burn.
Could Dan Burn not just like wade across the oceans? I'm sure he'd only come to his ankles or something like that.
Couple of strides over to Qatar, mate. Absolutely.
Just think, I've got images of the Statue of Liberty and Ghostbusters walking through.
Yes, Ghostbusters 2, classic movie, mate. Where's Ash in the comments? He'll like that one. But what's your take, Dan? Burn the World Cup. Are you kind of in agreement with Mark? Do you think he'll get overlooked because his name doesn't end in Maguire?
That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, he's probably in that big pool of about 55 or something like that. But I don't think he'd go, to be honest. And as I say, that doesn't bother me that much. I mean, obviously, from a Newcastle perspective, Trippier will go to the World Cup. Pope will go to the World Cup. But Dan Burn, he probably deserves a chance to go and prove he's got capability. He probably deserves an England cap at some point in his career for the level he's playing at. But whether he's good enough to play in England at a World Cup and represent England in that sort of stage is probably debatable, even from my point of view. Looking at the sort of left back position in itself is quite interesting because obviously you mentioned Targett there, Mark, being out of favour a little bit at the moment. Dan Burn making that position his own, but then you've got to think you've got Jamal Lewis sat on the bench as well. You've got Paul Dummett as well. I mean, Paul Dummett's perhaps more of a centre back these days, but can certainly play left back and obviously was in that role in his younger days. So it is interesting that Dan Burn, who's probably better suited as a centre back, is keeping out, 2 or 3 actual left backs from the side in that role, which I find quite interesting, which shows that obviously the manager has faith in him. But again, it is that lack of attacking ability, lack of pace that he has, which perhaps means that we can't get down the left as easy as Trippier and Almiron get down the right. And that's obviously the advantage that Targett brings with just that extra couple of yards that he can get on the overlap. But Targett, as I say, is steady, not a world beater, but probably will come back in eventually.
Yeah, what would worry me, I think, is it's great having Burn there now with his presence and everything else, but I wouldn't want to see Burn at left back with Maxi in front of him. I don't think he'd have the pace to deal with the pressure he'd be put under. Almiron's a different kettle of fish altogether because Almiron has that ability to come back with speed and energy to
he never stops running.
Involved.
Almiron, he never stops running.
Oh, he's incredible. But even Elliot Anderson, I thought, which I'm going to come on to in a second because I was well impressed with the cameo. But you put Maxi in front of Burn, I think Burn would get exposed a bit. I don't think Maxi would track back and cover him a bit. So I think that's where Targett needs to come back in when you're playing Maxi, I think.
He wouldn't, but at the same time, obviously Dan Burn's defensive capabilities are good, if not better than Matt Targett's perhaps, which is the difference.
True. Yeah.
Because, I mean, I put Dan Burn one-on-one and sort of take the pace out of the situation, just one-on-one trying to beat him without, getting down the line, then I think Dan Burn, he often, he wins the ball in those situations, but obviously lacks that pace, and so it can get turned quite easily.
It's a good comment by Roger, actually, Mark. This takes me on to my next point. I thought Anderson looked brilliant in the cameo yet again. The kid seems to just do it every time, Mark, when he comes on. He just looks better and better and better. And Roger's asking a good question there. Do you think Dan Burn out left with Anderson might be the better option rather than Targett or ASM? I mean, we talked about not bigging Anderson up too much, mate, but I mean, if the kid keeps playing like this, he's going to have to give Eddie a real decision to make soon whether he starts a game, isn't he?
Yeah, look, as we said this last night, because we got onto this subject as well, and I do think we'll see more cameos from Anderson before, you know, he'll push and push and push, and he'll get those 20-30 minute runs to run himself into the team, and sooner or later it will become impossible to ignore him and to leave him out, and he'll get that start. But I do think for now we'll probably see what he's done with other players. Eddie Howe is drip them in gently, and he'll get those 20-30 minutes to shine and build up his experience on the field before he's unleashed for a full game.
There's a great comment by Ash. He was so good. He lost the ball, took on himself, lost the ball, and then give it back to himself again. Dan, just to bring you in, actually, because obviously you do a lot with Gateshead, and there's a lot of former academy players who were supposedly the next big thing, who have obviously not spent the rest of their career in Newcastle and doing really well for the likes of Gateshead and teams like that. Something that, and no disrespect to those guys who came before, or Matty Longstaff or anybody like that, but Elliot Anderson just looks a little bit special, mate, doesn't he? It's something's in there, isn't there, that we haven't seen for a long time, I think, in a young player.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to the lads at Gateshead, because they're a fantastic bunch and there's some real good talent there. But Anderson, I mean, as I say, he's consistently making Premier League cameo appearances at the moment, which is perhaps more than any of the other ones who currently play for Gateshead ever got to, unfortunately for them. But he's just got that natural talent, hasn't he? He's got that technical ability. It's something that you can't really teach, I think is probably the best way of putting it, which perhaps the other ones didn't. So, yeah, I think he will flourish and develop under Howe. I mean, he's by no means the finished product at all and will get better as the years come. But it's just exciting that we actually have an academy player on our books who we can actually see growing into the first team with a lot of potential, which we haven't had in a long time. I mean, yes, you can mention Sean Longstaff, but he's not got that technical ability in comparison to Anderson. Like, Longstaff is good for a pass, but can't beat a man like Anderson can, for example.
Yeah, I think the good thing about it as well, you're right, Dan, it's great the fact that he's one of our own, effectively he's an academy player and everything else. That can't be overlooked, but it's the fact that under Eddie Howe, certainly, under Steve Bruce and arguably Pardew as well, and guys like that, Rafa, we didn't have somebody off the bench that other teams could look at and go, oh shit, they're bringing that kid on. Oh shit, he's a bit nippy, he's a bit handy, he finds space, he gets on the ball. We need to watch it here. We've got tired legs. But now we have a player that can do that. And he is still young, he is still raw in many ways, but the bit I love about him is the confidence. I think that me and Mark talked about this. The loan move to Bristol Rovers was the best thing that ever happened to him, because he went there a boy and come back a man, and he looks like he's filled out a bit. And I think there was a bit in the game last night. I can't remember who passed the ball to him, Mark. We talked about last night. The ball was fizzed at him. It might have even been Trippier. And his first touch was like a veteran of 28-year-old or something. He killed it dead. And then he just hesitated the shot a little bit. And that'll come with confidence, Mark, and games, won't it, where he'll take that touch and then he'll go for goal, won't he?
That's almost the only frustration with him at the moment, is there is that hesitancy to actually take a shot.
Does he shoot? What does he do? Yeah.
And that'll come. I think was it Cody got in a good block on him last night as he went to shoot. And that was really the first moment you went, oh, he's taken this early. And it would have been a decent chance, but it was well defended. But yeah, I think that's the only, not a criticism of him at all. But he's still a young player.
You're waiting for the flourish, isn't it? You're waiting for that to flourish and just come out of his game a bit.
Exactly. Sooner or later, that will just click, and he'll learn to trust himself in that situation and just take the shot. So
that's a fair comment. Actually, as well. Yeah, that does run through the squad a little bit.
But I think that hesitancy was there with Miggy for a long time as well. That he didn't trust himself, and you're starting to see the benefit of him actually now trusting that left foot of his to actually get a shot on target.
Well, yes, he trust his right foot, does he?
No, definely not. But he's starting to show exactly what he can do, and he's got some trust in himself now, and that's just confidence. And that will come with Anderson as well, and he will get more and more confident on the ball. He'll get more and more confident in front of goal. So those, again, I've said this about Willock too, but the goals and things will come with him soon.
We did touch a bit on it last night as well. The link up, Dan, potential link up between Willock and Anderson looks exciting. There was a couple of moments, I don't know if you saw it in the ground, there's a couple of little 1-2s between them two with the legs, the energy that they had. Me and Mark were saying that looked really exciting. Did you feel that in the ground as well, mate? Was that something that yourself and the fans around you were getting a bit excited about?
Yeah, I mean, when Willock drives forward, he's hard to knock off the ball, isn't he?
Strong, he's fast.
He can take the ball, carry it, 20, 30 yards up the field. As I say again, it's just Willock is someone who's desperate for a goal. You can tell that in the way he's playing. Because I think he's I'm not one for stats, but I was listening to another podcast, and I think of all the Premier League midfielders who haven't scored a goal, he has, I think, the second highest expected goals, which just shows that he's getting himself in those positions and just not quite getting it into the back of the net, which is what he needs. I think obviously when he first came to Newcastle, he couldn't stop putting it in the back of the net.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden he can't buy one, but I think it'll come. He's certainly playing well enough. It's not like he's playing badly or anything. It's just the fact that he just isn't finishing chances. But yeah, Willock and Anderson, again, two young English players who have that ability to just run, take people on, and just get at defenders and frighten them with their strength and pace, it's great to see. It's good to watch, and is a stark contrast to what we've perhaps always sometimes been used to watching at Newcastle in recent years.
Mark's so excited, he's having a strobe light going on there in his face. He's getting that excited. He's got dancing a minute. So
are you all right there, Mark? Deep breaths.
No, he's on mute. I was just going to say, Dan, actually, that there's some great Joe Willock analysis videos, especially on this channel. So make sure you check that out as well. But we're going to move on to the next category.
Plugging evermore.
Seamless, mate. Seamless or shameless, you choose. So moving on to the next category, which let's be honest with you, I think every Newcastle United fan right now is shining that signal up in the sky. We're talking about the Botman. I mean, this guy is absolutely phenomenal. Mark, just coming to you on this. I think I made the claim, didn't I, in the Evermore chat. I think this kid is the best player, best defender we've had since Colaccini and Woodgate. And in my opinion, they're probably the best two centre-halves I've seen in my Newcastle United supporting time. Am I being a bit hyperbolic there, mate? Am I having a bit of hysteria and histrionics, as old Bruce would say? Or am I bang on?
You just need to dust yourself down, Chris. Come on.
Exactly.
I do hear that Steve Bruce is 2-1 for the Prime Minister's job, mate. So watch out for that.
God help us. Somebody said, what was the tweet earlier on that Kiko Sanchez Flores is on his way to Downing Street as we speak?
Peter Ogden Wiggy's in the car park.
Yeah, man. But Botman, maybe a little bit too early, but the signs are there, and we've said it, many times over the last few weeks. Look, this kid has got a decade ahead of him, and potentially a decade ahead of him at St James's Park. So he's phenomenal now. God knows what he's going to be like in sort of 4 or 5 years' time, because his just calmness and ability to read the game and play the ball as well. That sort of spine now, where you've got Pope behind him and him linking up with Bruno in the middle. Is that it's that ball out, isn't it? We've touched on this before, but that ball out from Botman into Bruno to then set up Newcastle going forward. That's his ability all over, and he's not rattled by anything. He's not phased. He came back into the side after having that sort of little rest, and he's not missed a beat. He's not made a mistake. He's just looked very, very good. I am absolutely with Roger there. I'm a huge fan of him.
Yeah, he's a huge fan. Roger did say he misplaced a couple of passes, but
he did.
Can't be too hard on him. Dan, just your take from being obviously in the stadium. And that's what I love about Evermore. We have two different perspectives. We have on the TV, where you see the wider spectrum of the game, but when you're in the ground, you see something different. So it's two different ways to view it, mate. So in the ground, I mean, obviously me and Mark have both been in the ground to see Botman live. He's massive. He's got this presence. He's just huge. I mean, does he look as much of a Rolls Royce, or did he look as much of a Rolls Royce?
You've just taken the word out of my mouth, Chris.
Sorry, mate.
He purrs like a Rolls Royce.
He does.
He just
you hear music when you look at him, kind of a thing.
I'm gonna say he has leather interior and everything, and he
does, mate. He did seats the lot, mate. He's flying.
Yes.
He's flying.
Yes, he has a champagne bit in the middle of his dashboard as well.
we could go on.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no, he just oozes class. It's a bit like Kieran Trippier, but obviously Trippier's perhaps at the other end of his career. But you can tell both of them just have that natural defending ability. They're always so
that
calm.
step up, isn't it, Dan? It's that step up in quality, isn't it? You can just see it.
They're just so calm on the ball. They don't really get flustered in defending situations. They just do what they need to do. They put the foot in at the right moment. Don't, as I say, let defenders often get the better of. Sorry, attackers get the better of them, and just know where to positionally. Fantastic. I think that's really key to defending. I mean, obviously, you look at perhaps people like Trent Alexander-Arnold, and you think, yes, brilliant going forward, but positionally very unaware. And you look at Botman, you look at Trippier, and you think these guys, they know exactly where they need to be and when they need to be there. And so and this is someone who's he's 22. So
mate,
Trippier is at the stage now, and fair play to him, but he's 30 or 31, is it?
And he's still brilliant. He's still
brilliant, yes, and probably still has another, good at least 4 or 5 years in him, I'd say, to Kieran Trippier. But Sven Botman at 22, and to be like that now, God knows what he's going to be like in 5-6 years when he hits his perhaps peak. And if he does that at Newcastle, then we are in for one hell of a defender, one hell of a player on our books, and for the price we got him at as well. It's fantastic. So yeah, he is that much of a Rolls Royce. As I say, he has all the works. He has the little statue at the front that pops out the bonnet and everything.
Dan's been reading the Rolls Royce brochure before he's come on today.
There's a one parked on the drive outside. Yeah,
they've got parking sensors. They've got
Chris, you have no idea, honestly.
The chauffeur and yeah,
exactly. Guys with white gloves and all that. But to be fair, Dan, you're right. I mean, it's so exciting to have a player like that. I think the comparison that I drew was, again, it's that calmness, Mark, isn't it, with them two players? Woodgate was like that. Woodgate's positional sense was incredible. He moved before the striker even moved back when Woody was here. Unfortunately, he was made of glass, wasn't he? Colaccini was like that. He was almost like a midfielder at the back. Some of the times he scared the living shit out of us, didn't he? He'd do a Cruyff turn or a nutmeg, and you'd be like, "What the fuck is he doing?" Or he'd try an overhead kick or something. But he managed to do it all right. But Botman seems to be a mixture of both. He's got that kind of quality, skill, calmness, but he's also got that big burly strength that he can tussle with the biggest and the baddest, and he can keep up with the guys on the deck, and he can watch the tricky merchants marking. He seems to have it all. And I think Cicely Toon said there, imagine him and Van Dijk at the back for the Netherlands. I mean, I don't think he is in contention for the World Cup, as Ash said. He's walked out of the 21s, but I don't think he was in for a shout anyway. Mark, was he for the Dutch squad?
He surely has to be in contention for it because he has been playing so well. I mean, my feeling with him is the way that he plays in his ability on the ball and his ability to read. He's very Italian. If you look at
that's why Maldini wanted to sign him so much, isn't it? That's exactly.
If you go back to the old Milan days of Baresi and Costa Curta and
even Nesta,
Maldini,
as well,
Nesta, they were all great physically, and they were all great at reading the game and good with the ball too. And he's just got that air about him, isn't he? Where, like I said before, nothing phases him. He's so confident in his own ability, and he's so calm. And when the pressure's on, he doesn't wilt, and he's going to be phenomenal over the next 10 years.
Dan's just Googling them players there, going, who the hell are these players he's talking about?
I know who they are.
I'm only kidding. You're a football purist, Mr. Wales. You know your onions, mate. You're a young man, but you're wise beyond your years, mate. Don't you worry about that. But yeah, I mean, it is so exciting. I mean, we just have to enjoy him while we can. I mean, what I loved about Botman, I think just one last bit on that, was when he was dropped by Eddie Howe, there was no stropping. Cristiano Ronaldo, take note, storming off the pitch last night. Major wank. So there was no stropping, there was no moaning, there was no talking to his agent who was going, well, that's not what he came here for. He just knuckled down, got his head down, and he come back even better than ever. And I think that's a sign. At 22 years old, that's a sign of a proper player. And I saw the interview he did with Sean Longstaff with Newcastle United TV. It was
the Rolls Royce and the Ferrari, yeah.
The Rolls Royce and the Ferrari. I love Sean by saying, "What's a car with loads of miles on?" A Jeep. I love that. Yeah, because Sean Longstaff gets a lot of stick, but you know what? I just think every time you see him talk, especially in environments like that, he just comes across as such a class lad. He really, really does. And I think it helps lads like Botman settle, doesn't it, Dan? New players, young players coming in, have characters like Longstaff in the squad.
Well, you look on like their Instagrams, and I know it's not the best place to get your sort of news and all that, but they're always commenting on each other's photos when they post something, and sort of like just bigging each other up and supporting each other. And there really is a clear sense of unity in that and togetherness in that squad. Whether there be a seasoned player who's been there for a long time like John Joe Shelby, or whether it be someone who's brand new like Sven Botman, and they're all sort of welcomed and warmed into the squad really quickly, and they all are forming into this big master plan that Eddie Howe is forming, and it's just a joy to watch, to be honest. And long may it continue. I'm sure there'll be bumps along the road when things perhaps won't always go our way. But we will get to where we want to be in the end, and whether it takes 5 years, whether it takes 10, we'll get there.
Well, it's a perfect segue because that makes it sound like there's no ceiling, Dan, which is brings us into a lovely segue there. Honestly,
I come back and it's just phenomenal.
The script is working well tonight.
It really is. It's honestly, it's almost like Dan's never been away. But yeah, I mean, Mark, you've got some info on this, so I'll start with you on this one. But if anybody doesn't know, I'm sure I'm waiting for a Clippity Klopp comment in the comments there. But so old turkey teeth himself, Jurgen Klopp, was having a gripe the other day about the clubs that have no ceiling. And he mentioned Manchester City, obviously brilliant, massive club, loads of money. He mentioned Paris Saint-Germain, or Cheat Code FC as we call them. Then he also mentioned Newcastle United, saying that there's no ceiling for this club now. Oh, congratulations. He had a bit of a grumble. It prompted Eddie Howe to come out, Mark, and in Eddie Howe's own words, he's got to defend his club a bit here. And I think with Eddie Howe being as articulate and everything Eddie Howe is, intelligent, he basically said there was some inaccuracies. And I think you want to point out some of these inaccuracies, Mark, don't you? From the old Clippity Klopp.
Inaccuracies is one thing. Right. I mean, it's been done before, but let's look at it this way. The days of just being able to go out and spend like there's no tomorrow are gone.
Like Chelsea did, like City did.
Yeah, exactly. They did it at the very beginning before the FFP became an issue. Now, I know clubs get away with FFP stuff so now, but we'll play in the rules that FFP actually works. So if you go certainly over, yeah, exactly.
I knew that was coming.
If you go over the last 10 years, yes, City have spent £1 billion on players and stuff, but let's cut it down to the report that I looked at earlier on. That was the last 5 years, and he mentioned City as being one that can just go out and spend and spend and spend. And have a look at the net spend. And I know people will argue and say, well, it's. But net spend is a good barometer because it shows exactly what you've got going out and what you've got coming in. And Liverpool sit ahead of Manchester City in terms of net spend. So I'd like him to explain that one to me. They also sit behind the likes of Wolves, Villa, Newcastle already. Granted, that a lot of that is in the last two windows.
Yeah.
But Spurs, West Ham, Chelsea, Manchester United, and Arsenal, who none of which is state-owned. I think that was his bit of gripe, wasn't it? That he was the state-owned clubs that can go out and spend an absolute fortune. But he kind of has to look at a little bit of the facts first and just go, well, actually, it's not just that. You spend it wisely, and I believe City have. They bring in a lot of players, the younger players that they can then develop, and then if they're not quite good enough for them, they can sell them on. That you look at the likes of Douglas Luiz that went to Villa, Zinchenko's moved on for lots of money. Jesus has come in and gone on for more money as well because he hasn't quite been as good as City wanted. Now, he's gone on and done very well at Arsenal, but he wasn't quite what City needed. So they've played the transfer game really well over the last few years. And Liverpool have to get better in that regard too. And it's not just about just throwing billions at it. They've got to do it right. It's Klopp, isn't it? I mean, you said this before, but since he lost the glasses, he became a right whinging git.
Yes.
Yeah, I accept that point, City. I really do. That might turn out to be one of the worst decisions they've made. But you look at the money they recoup on the players like Zinchenko and Jesus, where that 100 million spend doesn't then become too bad because they've recouped an awful lot of money elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting one, Dan. I mean, obviously we're a Newcastle podcast, so we're not going to talk too much about Jurgen Klopp, but the best part of that bit was when he moaned that Manchester City went and spent a fortune on the best striker in the world. He was obviously referring to the inhuman Erling Haaland, the Man City bought for 60 odd million quid, whereas he bought Darwin Núñez for 30 million quid more than Haaland. He seems to have amnesia a little bit, Klopp. I wonder if that teeth whitening stuff is fucking his memory up or something, because he doesn't seem to be getting his facts straight here.
Yeah, I mean, you know what it is with Jurgen Klopp. When he first came to the Premier League, I thought he was a breath of fresh air, and I think a lot of people did as well. But all of a sudden, he's just become really, really unlikable with a lot of the things he says in press conferences, and even the way he treats journalists. To be fair, when they ask perfectly reasonable questions, and it's
as one yourself, Dan. That's you look at that as an aspiring journalist now that you are. You're thinking that's one of your peers, and he's talking to them like shit.
That's the thing. I mean, the questions that they've asked, that they've not been bad. They've been perfectly reasonable questions that they're entitled to ask. And it's the way he sort of like condemns them for asking those questions and makes them as if it's a stupid thing to ask when it's really not, and it's the public have a right to know. It's just really, really annoying and frustrating from like my point of view looking at it. But yeah, he just I don't know. I just think the way he's going on about the things that he clearly hasn't done his research into regarding net spend, Newcastle, etc., etc. It's just really uninformed of him, and he should, as a person in his position, should know better than to make these comments, especially if people are easily going to find him out in the way that we have done. Now, yes, there'll be those who defend him, but as far as I'm concerned, what he said is undefendable. And I've really gone off Jurgen Klopp, and I would actually like to be in a press conference and ask him some questions. Actually, so I'm going to.
You would do, mate. Yeah, you're the Steve Bruce Slayer, mate. You've got previous form for that, so yeah, you absolutely would ask him a question. But yeah, I mean, they're silly saying that Mourinho went the same. That was true. I loved Mourinho, and then he really went miserable, didn't he? And Roger.
These Marmite characters, aren't they? Who
Do I think it's ego, Dan? Ego. They think they're untouchable. A bit like Fergie was the same. Fergie was similar. He wasn't probably as charismatic as these two were as characters. But Fergie was a bit of a knob, wasn't he, really? Let's be honest. He was a great manager, but he was a bit of a prick.
Well, that's the thing, called Newcastle a wee club in the northeast, which is just completely disrespectful to what we are. But yeah, they all have egos. They probably all think they have this sort of God-given right to be, towards the top of the league, and they don't. And eventually they'll get found out when clubs like us who are on the rise start to overtake them, as we already are this season.
That's a great comment by Tune for Life. I mean, that net spend Mark pulled up there, it's a great comment, Tune for Life. For years, we were totally neglected. Transfer window after transfer window, no spend, minimum spend, free transfers, 5 million Vernon and Nitas, all this kind of crap. And the club had to spend 200 million quid in 2 windows because the squad was so depleted that, that's why Newcastle's figures are as high as what Mark showed there. For Klopp not to realise that, or appreciate that, or see that, just shows you what a knob he is. But I think Eddie Howe is just, to me, he's a class act. Every time he deals with something, whether it be the Saudi, controversial links that they're always getting thrown up by whichever bedwetting journalist wants to pull it up to get 5 minutes of fame that day. No offense to these journalists, Dan. Who
would be a journalist, eh?
I know, mate. Christ, you got thick skin, funny lad. But whoever wants to, the sort I mean, Dan. Guys like you would ask a football question. You wouldn't ask Eddie Howe a geopolitical question because that's not Eddie Howe's.
Well, that's the thing. I understand why they want to ask him those questions, but because yes, he's the face of a football club that is perpetuating this sort of a regime. But ask the geopolitical questions to the ones who can actually make a difference to the geopolitical issues. That's
exactly.
It came up again this week. There were a couple of journalists, particularly from Liverpool, I noticed that started to have a little pop at Eddie Howe. And one of them had said, Eddie had said he was going to go away and learn about it. That's fine, but he still doesn't have to comment about it because he's not. No. He doesn't feel knowledgeable enough to be able to talk about it. And at the end of the day, he's a football manager. He's not the owner of the club. He's not the chief executive. He doesn't run the club. He runs the football team. His job is that. His job is not to talk about the politics of the world and what goes on with another country's leaders. His job is to just manage the football, and that's what he's been hired to do. So I completely understand why he doesn't want to get involved in that. You wouldn't, because unless you are completely, immersed in what's gone on and that whole side of it, you're just not going to want to trip yourself up by getting involved in that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there's other things at play with the club, isn't there, Dan? There's obviously the training ground currently is getting refurbed. That all has to go as part of the net spend with the FFP regulations. St James's Park's massively needing expansion. There's sellout crowds every game. We've got 20,000-30,000 in the waiting queue, Dan, for season tickets. There's been rumours about dropping the pitch, hasn't there, and increasing the capacity. All these things have to be paid for, don't they, by the club, mate? So you have to factor that all in, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, the drop of the pitch is an interesting one. I actually hadn't heard of that rumour yet, but that is sort of what's the case at the Etihad, because the pitch is below ground level, and it's how they've been able to build a bit higher up. But yeah, I just think, football is political and always will be, but when you're asking questions like that to a man who really isn't concerned with it, it just seems, ask him like questions about football politics, but maybe not actual politics. I understand, these owners are going to get criticised. That's always going to happen because of the nature of who they are and where their money's coming from. Fully accept that, and perhaps even at times we should be open that we even ourselves could criticise some of the practices that goes on in countries like Saudi Arabia, and I will never ever defend that. But at the same time, yes, Eddie Howe, despite being the face of Newcastle, he's not. What is he going to honestly get? What sort of an answer are they expecting? Is what I don't really understand. Are they expecting him to suddenly just say, "Yes, okay, I'm, I don't agree with our owners." Is that what they're wanting? I don't really know what they're trying to get at. Yes, the money that will come into Newcastle to improve the training ground and improve the stadium and buy players, is coming from these places. But I don't know. I just think it's all. To be honest, I'm not even sure how to sum that up. To be honest, it's all just a massive issue where, yes, journalists are going to ask these questions, but I'm not entirely sure what they're wanting to get from it.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? The spin in the pitch is an option there, silly. Yeah, that's the rumours doing the rounds. Obviously we are stuck for space because of the previous ownership selling off land. Thanks again, Mike. So we're kind of stuck for what we can do with regards to the expansion plans. Obviously, there's parts of the ground that we can expand on. Sooner or later, I still think, Mark, we had this conversation today. I still think we might move grounds, but by that point, we might hopefully be a Champions League regular club, pushing for titles, all that kind of stuff, like City have done, like Spurs have done, like Arsenal have done. The footprint's already there. So I think that could be an option. But just one here, Mark, for you to take on for running up that hill. I love that name. Thanks for that, Kate. Do you feel we need to sell to meet financial fair plays? That's an interesting one because we haven't not yet, but we haven't got a lot of sellable assets. The only one that comes to mind really for me is Maxi. And I still think Maxi's days might be numbered, And I think this season would have been a bit in and out early on. I don't think that's going to help his cause.
But I think the way that the club are running, it's bringing in more commercial revenue, and that's going to be key. We've talked about that at length, I think, over previous episodes. So that you start to bring that in, you have less of a need to be able to do that. But then it becomes natural as you start to bring in some of the younger players that we're starting to see, the likes of Diallo and Qual and players that come in and give you something to potentially sell later on as your academy grows, as the rest of the facilities grow, and you bring in more and more players. You can start to utilize those assets to fund further down the line. I genuinely don't think you have to do that now. There is nothing really to sell other than perhaps Maxi. There's obviously a few that are going to run their contracts out this season, so those wages come off the bill, so that frees up a little bit of money. But there's no danger, I don't think, of being hampered by FFP too soon. And obviously with the introduction of the likes of Silverstone and stuff to bring in commercial revenue and help with that process, and you look at the deals that are being done for shirt sponsors and stuff. That's where the majority of your funding is going to come. The one thing I touch on the stadium stuff, we'll go back to. I don't think they'll spin the pitch. I think they've already kind of looked, and that would be I think, too difficult a thing. And if you're going to do that, where are you going to play? There's no local facility to be able to go and play your games at, save down the road in a certain red and white district, which I don't think would happen. It's not like Spurs, where the new stadium and you get to go and play at Wembley. That's not going to happen up here.
That's very true.
So I think it is going to be being creative about expanding the stadium. It's probably going to need to be trying to do something with the East Stand where possible, whatever creative way they can do that, and the Gallagher. But that's going to involve trying to probably repurchase the land off. Is it Strawberry Holdings?
Strawberry Holdings.
Bought it off actually. So
is there not student union properties in there, Dan? Already, I think there is.
There are student housing, private accommodation, but that's on the other side of the Strawberry, not really in place of where the stadium is, to be fair.
Okay.
So it shouldn't interfere too much. It's more the land that's currently just like above where the metro station is. That's a bit barren, has nothing on it. Where they're wanting to build stuff, obviously, because of what the land was sold. But
where the car parks were, wasn't it? You see all the work getting done there.
Yeah, and obviously you could. I'm sure that there's some way they could make the Gallagher a bit bigger, get it perhaps to the size of near enough to the Leazes and the Milburn. East Stand's more tricky because you've got obviously Leazes Terrace, the listed houses and buildings behind it. So obviously bringing that back, it blocks their sunlight, and I don't know if they'd ever get planning permission for that. But yeah, I'm sure they could arrange something with getting the Gallagher bigger and perhaps make it more symmetrical, so the Leazes and the Gallagher are pretty much identical. In the sense that then you've got essentially what is like at Celtic Park, where it goes round. You got 3 stands go around the pitch, and then you've got that one smaller stand in the East Stand, and that would probably take it to what, like 62,000, which it's an extra 10,000, which I know it's not quite the 20,000 waiting list, but it's
we'd sell it like that, wouldn't we?
Yeah,
it would go like that.
Because that's the thing. If there's 20,000 in the waiting list, that's only half that, so it's going to go like that, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly, mate. It's incredible. Just some comments coming in. Actually, I think I put the cat amongst the pigeons with Max. You're not the first time I've done that, Mark. After I put that poll on Twitter as well. So Roger's saying that he was thinking that before, whether a signal or pretender, he doesn't fit us. I mean, I think that Max is always a polarizing player when you talk about the long-term plans. Silly's saying Mudryk would be good. I think we talked about him on Rumour Has It, Mark did him as well. And Ash is saying there, when Maxi comes back, he's got to prove his worth now. He looked brilliant under the Baron because he was a piece of polished steel and a pile of shite. He doesn't seem to work as part of a quality team. I think he was playing well, Mark, as defensive, wasn't he, before he got his injury? He was looking good.
He was good this season, yeah.
He has at times, but if you think back to the way that Bruce had them playing, and the peak for this season was probably the City game. Look at how deep Newcastle used to play and how deep they were really against City, and they held their line well and they pressed forward, but they weren't too high up the pitch at all times, so it gave Maxi space to run into. Maxi's at his peak when he is at full pace. His ability to control the ball at full speed is incredible. And where you're playing further up the pitch, if he gets the ball 20 yards from the edge of the area or 10 yards from the edge of the area, he hasn't got time to get up to speed. And I think he loses his effectiveness when he's not able to run at full speed. So you saw him torture Kyle Walker, but he was able to get it from the halfway line, pick up the ball, and then just turn and run. When Newcastle are playing much further up the field, he doesn't have that time to do it. So I think that's part of his problem, is being able to almost relearn how to tailor his speed. His initial speed isn't there. It's overall he's just able to run at speed with the ball. Yeah. It's that initial burst isn't quite there. It's
an interesting one, actually, Dan. Just what David Veach is saying there. He pulled up a great comment about Botman being like Woodgate as well. Love your thinking, David. But he's saying that Anderson could be another player. How could get the best out? We were talking about that before, and he likes the fact that as we're moving up towards Europe, we're obviously improving the squad. But this is a good point actually for Maxi, Dan. It couldn't have happened at a worse time for him because he come off the back of playing 2 really good games, and since he's been out, Miggy's been brilliant. Anderson's got his little cameos still happening. Fraser got kicked to shit when he come on, but he looked busy enough. Murphy's had a couple of decent games. Couldn't have been a worse time.
All right, because as much as we've slit. Yeah, I'm going to say he's done all right. That's the thing. He's not been terrible. He's done what he's needed to do. Obviously got a goal against Brentford. But yeah, that's the thing. It's a hard one because Maximin, he has in the games he's played this season. It's fair to say he's been really good. For perhaps where he had been playing a little bit, and as you say quite rightly, Mark, he was phenomenal against Manchester City. Tore Kyle Walker to absolute pieces, and obviously that great goal he scored against Wolves as well. Shouldn't go unmentioned too. So he made a good start to the season and then got injured, and then obviously came back briefly against Brentford, but then obviously has aggravated the injury again. We'll probably see him, but I don't think we'll see him Sunday, but we might see him in the last couple of games before the World Cup. Perhaps
Possibly.
cameos off the bench. And I think, I know it's tough, but I think he sort of needs to do all right in those games. But then again, he's got an extended sort of pre-season again as the World Cup comes in, as he's obviously not going to be playing for the French team. So the new year will be important for him. If he can stay fit and get back in the squad and start playing the way he did against Manchester City again, I just think that would be really important. But as I say, the way I look at it with Newcastle at the minute, we're doing well now without anywhere near having a full strength squad. We've not really had a full strength squad all season, to be honest. And if we can get to the World Cup and the January transfer window pretty much unscathed with the injuries we currently have, in the same sort of league position, top 6, top 8 for argument's sake, and then get to January, couple more additions, get Isak fit, get Maximin fit. Second half of the season, we could be a real scary threat if we can keep all those players fit and bring in a couple of new additions as well.
Absolutely. Listen, it's a really exciting season. And again, Dan, you've done it again. Another segue. Another team we may be a threat for the weekend is Spurs. You've done it again, honestly. Mark, there's a reason this lad's a professional. We're just pissing around here, honestly. He's world class. He's world class.
Hey, Chris, you're the best host I've ever come across. Don't you worry.
Oh, you would have to know what you like, you charmer. So yeah, we're going to get stuck into Spurs at the weekend. Spurs were a bit shady, Mark, against Manchester United. As we said, they looked a bit leggy themselves. Kane looked poor. He didn't really get into the game. Son was kind of in and out. I think Manchester United generally got through them, I would say, quite easy. Certainly in the midfield. Now, we all know we've got Bruno in the middle, and he knows what to do. So if Bruno's on fire down at Spurs, mate, he could torture Spurs if they play like that.
Yeah, it's a good test for him actually up against the likes of Højbjerg and stuff. But they did look tired. I think Man United played very well, and it's telling, isn't it, the times how much better they look when Ronaldo doesn't play. I think that was touched on in commentary last night. I think, in fact, that might have been a line from a certain Alan Shearer that happened to mention that. So. But Spurs have got that. They've got the ability to beat anybody on their day, but they do go through those little quiet games and take advantage of that. And if you can rattle them a little bit, they'll back off. And if you can keep Kane further back and not allow those runners to get beyond him and to let him turn and play the balls through, then you can stop a lot of what is good about Spurs attacking football. Excuse me, I'm squirming around because I'm having a cat climb up my back again, trying to make an appearance.
Well, yeah, I don't know if you've seen this, Dan, recently. Mark, aka Dr. Doolittle, has more animals than Chester Zoo in the house. So occasionally one might appear on his back or his head or fly across his face. So you just gotta. He's like Ace Ventura, mate. All righty then. Next topic. Mate. What is it? Honestly. So coming on to you, Dan, as Mark squirms with his pussy. Coming on to you for the weekend, mate. How? Sorry, mate, I had to do it. How do you think we're gonna look going at this game, mate? Are you confident the fact that we we've got that midfield strength, that dominance? If Joe there he is. If Joe Linton can get himself kind of calm and into a game and be dominant, do you think we've got a good chance of beating them for the weekend, mate? Or do you think it's a draw is going to be the best option?
Yeah, I mean, I think on Joe Linton, I think it actually it showed that even though he didn't have the best of performances in that first half, obviously, as we've mentioned, it showed that when he came off, perhaps that was that presence missing in the midfield last night, which allowed everything to perhaps get on the ball a little bit more and dominate things in the midfield. So even when he's not there, you can tell that he's not there and that his presence is missed. So yeah, if he can just get in amongst it, do the work that he needs to do in the midfield, the dirty work at times, and then obviously set things up for the likes of Bruno, Longstaff, or Willock, or whoever it may be, then yeah, we can give Spurs a good go. As we've mentioned, they were poor against Manchester United last night, and for all the season that they've had in terms of where they are in the league right now, they're having a good season points wise. Their performances haven't been brilliant. For a lot of the time, obviously they were beaten in the North London derby, but obviously Arsenal have been brilliant this season. So yeah, I don't see why we couldn't give them a go. I mean, obviously we went there last year under Eddie Howe, and took a bit of a hiding, to be honest, despite taking the lead through Fabian Schär in the first half. But again, we've improved since then. I know, obviously, as we've mentioned again, that we're missing players, but I don't see why, if we went to Old Trafford and we can get a point there, I don't see why we can't go to Tottenham and get something there. So I'm quietly confident, as I have been in all games this season, which makes a complete difference to how things were when perhaps we all started doing these podcasts together, going into games. But it'll be tough. Tottenham are a good side when they want to be, and they've got some great players. There's no denying that. But yeah, quietly confident. And if those players who we mentioned today can get on their game, if Wilson's firing a little bit more than he has been, if Bruno gets them the ball and dictates, and Joe Linton does what he needs to do in the middle of the park, then I don't see why we can't get something out of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Roger. I think 5 out of 9 points would be great. We've got to put this comment up from Ash. That's comment of the night, Ash. Thank you so much. You don't get this kind of quality with Steve Ray. Absolutely not. You don't get Tinder spammers and random pussycats climbing on people's backs, mate, at all in the Steve Ray show. Not that I watch it, but I'm sure that you don't, mate. So that's an absolutely top comment, mate. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think going back to the weekend, I think it will be a tough game. There's no doubt about that. My worry is, lads, that I think Conte will be raging about how they played against Manchester United. He was foaming in the press conference, Mark. What are you nodding along there? And I worry that Spurs might just take it out on us a little bit. I think we'll have tired legs. I suppose the question is, and I'll ask the two just to give me one word answer here. On Sunday, we're looking at Wood or Wilson starting. Mark?
Wilson.
Dan?
Wilson.
See, I agree with you. Now, my worry is that you're asking Callum Wilson to play a lot of football.
It is. I do get that.
And if he breaks down, lads, without Isak, that's a massive concern. I'm not advocating playing Chris Wood because I think you could play a traffic cone and it would probably do a better job. It possibly would occupy defenders more. But for me, my worry is I'd start Wilson. Depending on how the game goes, if we're getting beat or not, I'd hook him after about 60 minutes. If that, even after the first half, because you need him fit. Because without Isak in that squad, lads, he's our goal threat, and we would be in big, big trouble if he goes down injured. Either one of you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'd perhaps disagree about Chris Wood a little bit. I think he gets a bit more stick than perhaps he's due, because I think, yes, he's not the greatest, and we know that. But I think when he came in last season, he did what he needed to do, and he just led the line. And I know it's not the way we're wanting to play with someone like him in the team, but did what he needed to do. Scored, I know only 2 goals, but 2 very important goals in the sense that they won us games.
Yeah.
So yeah. Chris Wood, he's not the best, and it is a concern if he's having to lead the line again, considering that we've went out and bought Alexander Isak in attempts to try and not have that happen. And obviously he's got injured and then potentially Wilson get injured as well. So you could understand why perhaps in a game against Tottenham where it's tougher and there's not as good of a chance of us winning the game compared to, say, Everton last night, that Wood might start, and then you could bring perhaps Wilson on for the final 20 if you're wanting to get a goal, because I think obviously Wilson brings a more of a goal threat. So he may start with Wood as much as I want him to start with Wilson, and I completely understand that if he did. But yeah, again, as I mentioned a moment or two ago, Tottenham's, it's going to be a tough test, but we can get something there if we turn up, and I don't see why we wouldn't.
Absolutely. But it's a good way to end up, lads. Just quickly, prediction, Mark, win, lose or draw?
I'm going to go 1-1. I think it'd be a draw.
Dan?
I'm going to side with Mark. I'm going to go 1-1.
4-0 to Newcastle. I'm only joking.
You know what, Chris? Why not? Why not?
Absolutely not. I'm going to go for 1s each, I think, as well. And I think that's a crap result, as Roger said there. If we can get 5 points out of 9 in them fixtures, that's brilliant. But yeah, again, I just think we're going to have to manage the squad as best that we can. Some comments coming there. I think Silly agrees with us, 1s each as well. I think for us, that's a great result, especially if the back of Spurs looking to set about somebody. Conte won't like that. So yeah, fingers crossed. We'll be back, I'm sure, Mark, with a preview and a review come the weekend for the game. So make sure you keep it ever more, guys. And as I mentioned, if you haven't already, please click that like and subscribe button. If you haven't, we'd love to have you on board. It's all free content, this. We don't charge anybody. We just like to cover Dan's face with the logo there. Just because he's younger than us and we're devastated every time we look at him. He's got more hair than me. Anyway, moving on. I think that, for us, it's going to be a great game of the weekend, guys. Thank you so much for everyone in the comments tonight. It really helps the channel flow. We will be back with previews and reviews. Me and Mark will be back with what's going on Monday. But I won't be here next week forevermore because I am having a week off. And the stat man himself will be in the hosting chair. So go easy, everybody. I'm looking at you, Ash.
Please look after us.
I'm looking at you, Ash, in the comments. Class clown throwing things out the window. So everybody go easy on Mark. And I'm
substitute teacher next week, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm sure I'll do a brilliant job. But until then, guys, let's keep supporting. Exactly. Let's keep supporting that team of McCoy United. Dan, say your line, you're back. And
how are the lads?
That's the one, exactly. We'll catch you next time, lads. See you later.
Take care, guys.